Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Space channel. Space does not stay the same as you travel outward. It grows colder, darker, and emptier at every single step, with no stretch of relief along the whole road. Leave the warmth of the sun, and the warmth fails while the light still shines. Leave the light behind, and the stars themselves thin to almost nothing. Leave the galaxy, and the space beyond is emptier still, ruled by a weight that gives off no light and by dark holes from which nothing returns. Every edge you cross turns out to open onto something larger and quieter than the last. Tonight we travel that whole road outward, from the edge of the sun's warmth to the farthest edge of anything the universe has ever let us see. If you find these slow journeys outward worth your time, a like or a subscribe helps the channel reach others who do. Thank you for being here. But for the next 2 hours, none of this is anything you need to carry. The cold and the dark are very far away, and you are somewhere warm. Settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. Let the day fade away. Let's begin. Part 1. There is no single edge. The first thing to understand about the edge of space is that there is no single edge. There is no wall waiting out there in the dark, no shoreline, no last fence with a sign hung on it to tell a traveler that the universe has ended and something else has begun. What waits instead is a long series of thresholds, each one a place where something familiar quietly runs out. The warmth runs out first. Then the light that guides runs out. Then the pull of the sun runs out. Then the stars themselves thin away, and after them the galaxies, until at the very end even the ability to see anything at all comes to a stop. Each of these is an edge in its own way. And each one, once crossed, turns out to have a larger and quieter emptiness lying on the far side of it. This is the strange rhythm of a journey outward, and it is worth settling into before we begin, because it will repeat again and again tonight. Every time we reach what looks like the boundary of the known, the boundary dissolves as we approach it. What seemed like an ending becomes a threshold. And beyond that threshold a new dark opens, colder than the last and wider than the last, with its own distant edge shimmering somewhere ahead. The universe is built in layers, each nested inside the next, except that none of the layers has walls. There is only the slow fading of one thing and the slow beginning of another. We should say plainly what we mean by Scarier, since the title of this journey promises it, and we will keep our promise in the only way this channel ever does, which is gently. The unease out here is not the sudden kind. Nothing is going to leap from the dark. The disquiet is the quiet kind, the kind that comes from noticing how much colder, how much darker, and how much emptier each new region is than the one before, and from realizing how little of what governs it can ever be seen at all. That is the feeling we will follow outward tonight, one threshold at a time, and it is a feeling that can be held calmly, the way you might hold a smooth stone, turning it over without any need to put it down. Consider the traveler we are sending out. It is not a spacecraft, and it is not a person in a suit, and it does not need air or fuel or a way home. The traveler is simply your attention, drifting outward through the dark at whatever pace your mind allows, pausing at each edge long enough to feel the cold deepen and the light thin before easing onward again. There is no hurry to any of it. The distances ahead are so enormous that no real journey could ever cross them, and so we will cross them the only way they can be crossed, which is in thought, slowly and half asleep. 3 things will change as we go, and it is worth naming them now, so you can feel them shifting beneath the surface of everything that follows. The first is temperature. We begin in warmth, near a star, in the one reliably comfortable place there is, and from here the temperature will fall and fall, past the cold of the outer planets, past the deeper cold between the stars, all the way down toward the coldest number that nature allows. The second is darkness. We begin under a bright disk of a sun, and we will watch that sun shrink to a spark, and then watch the stars themselves grow sparse, until at last the brightest things in the sky are older than the earth and too faint to cast a shadow. And the third is the pull of things that cannot be seen. This one grows slowest and matters most, because by the end of the journey the universe will turn out to be governed almost entirely by mass we can never look at, and by objects from which no light ever returns. It helps to say a word about scale before we set out, because the numbers ahead will grow past anything the body has ever felt, and there is a gentle way to hold them. We are used to distances we could walk, or drive, or fly across in a day. The distances tonight are not like that. Very early in the journey, we will pass the point where such comparisons stop meaning anything, and we will begin measuring in the time it takes light to travel, because nothing else will do. A light second, a light hour, a light year. Each one is simply how far light gets in that much time, and light is the fastest thing there is. When a distance is 1,000 light-years across, it means that light, outrunning everything, still needs 1,000 years to cross it. The universe is built at that scale, and we will let the scale wash over us slowly, rather than trying to seize it all at once. There is a comfort in taking it gradually, one threshold at a time, rather than leaping straight to the largest number. If you tried to jump from your own doorstep to the edge of sight in a single thought, the mind would simply refuse it, the way the eye refuses to look at the sun. But if you step outward gently, from the warm world to the cold planets, from the planets to the frozen shell, from the shell to the nearest stars, each step is only a little larger than the last, and the mind can follow. That is how we will travel. Not in one impossible leap, but as a slow drift outward, letting each new emptiness settle before we move on to the next. And it is worth noticing before we leave how rare the ground beneath us truly is. Almost nowhere in the universe is there a solid surface warmed by a nearby star, wrapped in air, holding liquid water, lit by a soft blue sky. That combination, which we think of as ordinary, is one of the rarest arrangements in all of existence. Nearly everywhere else is cold, or dark, or airless, or empty, or all of these together. We begin the journey standing on one of the universe's rare exceptions, and part of what the outward road teaches is simply how exceptional the starting place was. The dark we are about to enter is the ordinary condition of things. The warmth and light we are leaving behind are the strange and precious anomaly. So we set out from the anomaly into the ordinary, which is to say, into the dark. The traveler lifts away from the warm world and turns outward, and the first thing to fade, sooner than anyone expects, is the warmth itself. It does not vanish at a boundary. It ebbs quietly, the way heat ebbs from a hearth when the fire burns low, and we follow it outward as it thins, drifting toward the first of the night's many edges. One more thing is worth settling before we go, and it is a question of feeling rather than fact. People often imagine that a journey into deep space would be frightening because of what might be found there, some presence in the dark, some danger waiting. The truth is stranger and quieter. The dark holds no presence. It holds no danger of that kind. What makes the outward road sobering is exactly the opposite of a lurking something. It is the steady revealing of an enormous nothing, region after region of cold and empty space, growing larger and emptier the farther out we drift. There is nothing out there to fear in the ordinary sense. There is only the immense and patient absence of nearly everything, and the slow understanding of how much of that absence there is. That is a feeling worth learning to hold gently, and the whole journey is a practice in holding it. And notice, as we prepare to set out, that everything ahead can be met at the pace of the breath. There is no race to the edge of the universe. The distances are so far beyond any real crossing that the only way to travel them is the slow way, in thought, unhurried, pausing wherever the mind wishes to rest. If you drift off somewhere along the road tonight, out among the frozen worlds, or in the empty gulf between the stars, or in the deep quiet of a great void, that is not a journey left unfinished. It is simply a place to rest, and every place we will pass is a place worth resting in. Hold those three threads loosely as we begin. Colder, darker, and more ruled by the invisible at every step. That is the whole shape of the night. And the first threshold is close, closer than you might think, because the edge of warmth is not far out at all. It begins to fade almost the moment we leave the ground. Part 2. The edge of warmth. We begin in the one place in the whole universe that can be relied upon to be warm, and that place is near a star. It is easy to forget how unusual warmth is, because we have never lived anywhere without it. But warmth is not a property of space. Space itself is bitterly cold almost everywhere. Warmth is something a star makes and pours outward, and it thins as it travels according to a rule that never bends. Sunlight spreads over a sphere that grows as the square of the distance from its source. Double the distance from the sun, and you quarter the warmth that arrives. Move 10 times farther, and you receive 100th as much. The rule is quiet and simple, and utterly without mercy, and it is the reason the outer worlds are cold. At the distance where the Earth orbits, the arriving sunlight is strong enough to keep water liquid and to hold a whole living world at a temperate balance. This is the warmth we take for granted, the warmth of an afternoon, of sunlight on skin. But that same sunlight, following the same rule, weakens with every step outward. By the time it reaches the largest planet, it has fallen to a small fraction of its strength at the Earth, and the world it lights there is wrapped in a cold that never lifts, a cold that would freeze the breath and then the blood in moments. And that planet is not even halfway to the edge of the region we would call home. Travel to the farthest of the major planets, out where the great blue worlds turn slowly in the dark, and the sunlight has fallen to something near 1,000th of its strength at the Earth. Noon on such a world is not bright. It is a deep blue twilight, the kind of light you might find on Earth in the last few minutes before full dark, except that it never brightens and never fades. The sun there is still the brightest thing in the sky by far, a fierce white point too brilliant to look at directly. But it is only a point now. It has no disk you could measure with the eye. And it gives, for all its brightness, almost no warmth at all. This is worth pausing on, because it is the first of the strange reversals we will meet tonight. Up close, light and warmth arrive together. The sun that lights the sky is the same sun that heats the ground, and we come to think of them as one thing. But out here they come apart. The light still arrives, plainly and brightly, while the warmth has drained almost entirely away. You could stand in full sunlight, with the sun blazing in a black sky, and freeze. Light without warmth is the first sign that we have left the comfortable world behind, and it is only the first. Keep moving outward and the warmth continues to fall, without any wall to stop it. There is no sharp line where sunlight abruptly ceases to be warm. It simply grows fainter and fainter, until very quickly it carries too little energy to matter to anything. Past a certain distance, an object drifting in the dark is no longer kept warm by the sun in any meaningful way. Whatever warmth it has, it must supply itself from whatever faint heat is left over in its core, or else it takes on the temperature of empty space, which is measured in a few tens of degrees above the coldest temperature there can be. And even that small warmth is not the sun's doing. It is the faint background warmth of the universe as a whole, a subject we will come to much later, at the very edge of everything. So the first edge is not a boundary you could touch. It is the place where warmth quietly gives out while the sun still shines overhead. The traveler crosses it without any sense of a crossing, feeling only that the light that once meant comfort has become a cold light, a light that illuminates without heating, hanging in a sky that grows darker with every step. The sun does not abandon us at this edge. It simply becomes too far away to keep us warm, and we go on outward into a cold that from here will only deepen. Consider what the fading of warmth does to the worlds it leaves behind, because their coldness is not empty of interest. The inner planets, close to the fire, are scorched and dry, their surfaces baked, any water long since boiled away. A little farther out lies the temperate band, the narrow ring of distances where a world can hold liquid water and a gentle climate, and it is a narrow ring indeed, a thin zone of comfort around the star, with harshness on either side. Move past it, and the worlds turn to cold. The great outer planets are not solid at all in the way the inner worlds are. They are enormous balls of gas and ice, wrapped in atmospheres thousands of miles deep, and within those atmospheres the cold grows so severe that gases we think of as air on Earth turn to liquid and even to ice. On the moons of those outer worlds, the cold takes strange and beautiful forms. There are moons out there sheathed entirely in ice, their surfaces frozen so hard that the ice behaves like rock, cracked and ridged and ancient. There are moons where the cold is so deep that rivers and lakes are filled not with water but with liquids that on Earth would only ever be gases, methane and its kin, pooling in frozen basins under a dim and distant sun. The warmth that we take for granted, the warmth that keeps water liquid and air breathable, simply does not exist out here, and in its absence the ordinary substances of the world rearrange themselves into forms we would hardly recognize. Cold is not merely the absence of heat. At these depths, it is a force that reshapes whole worlds. And still the sun hangs in the sky above all of it, bright and useless, a fierce point of light that warms nothing. This is the deep strangeness of the edge of warmth, worth returning to, because it prepares us for every reversal that follows. We grow up believing that where there is light, there is warmth, that the two are one thing, that a sunlit place is a warm place. It is true only close to home. Out among the cold moons, the sunlight is real and bright and entirely without heat, and a traveler standing in it would freeze solid beneath a sun that blazed overhead. The first lesson of the outward road is that the comforts of home were local and provisional and are already beginning to come apart, one at a time, as the distance grows. We drift on past the last of the great cold worlds, past the frozen moons and the deep blue twilight, and the sun shrinks a little further behind us, and the warmth that was already faint fades toward nothing at all. Ahead, there is no more warmth to lose. There is only the next threshold, where the sun's breath, rather than its heat, finally gives out. And here is a quiet mercy in the arrangement of things. The very rule that starves the outer worlds of warmth is the rule that keeps the inner worlds from being scorched to nothing. The same falling off of sunlight with distance that leaves the far planets frozen is what spreads the sun's fierce output thin enough, at our own distance, to be gentle rather than deadly. We sit in the one narrow band where the arithmetic comes out kind, close enough for warmth and far enough for safety, and the coldness of everything beyond us is simply the other side of the same law that makes our own place livable. The cold out there and the comfort here are written in the same single rule. Notice, as we drift past this first threshold, how much of what we assumed was permanent was really just a matter of nearness. The warmth of a sunlit day, which felt like a fixed feature of the world, turns out to have been a local thing, available only in a thin shell close to the fire. Step out of that shell and it is gone, though the fire still burns in plain sight. There is a lesson in this that the rest of the journey will repeat in a dozen forms. Almost everything that feels solid and permanent about the sky is a gift of being close to something, and the farther out we go, the fewer of those gifts remain. Part 3. The edge of the wind. The sun does something besides shine. It breathes. From its surface it pours a continuous stream of charged particles outward in every direction, a thin and fast and endless wind that races out through the solar system and far beyond the planets. This wind is faint, almost past believing. It is emptier than any vacuum that could be made in a laboratory on Earth, so sparse that in any small volume of it you might find only a handful of particles. And yet it fills the entire space around the sun, and it moves fast, and it pushes. Where its outward push finally comes into balance against the thin gas that drifts between the stars, there is a wall. This wall is one of the very few genuine boundaries we will meet on the whole journey. Nearly every other edge tonight is a fading, a place where something grows too weak to matter. But this one is closer to a true edge, a real surface with an inside and an outside. Inside it, the space belongs to the sun. The particles are the sun's particles, blown from its own surface. Outside it, the space belongs to the galaxy, filled with the material that lies between the stars. The wall is the place where the sun's breath finally gives out and the wider galaxy begins. The sun's wind does not simply stop at this wall. It slows in stages, and the crossing has a structure to it. Far out, where the rushing wind first begins to feel the pressure of the gas beyond, it slows abruptly, piling up against what lies ahead. Past that it enters a turbulent, churning region where the wind is dense and hot and confused, mixing with the material it has been pushing against for so long. And at the outer edge of that region lies the true wall, the surface beyond which the wind cannot go, where the last of the sun's breath gives way to the cold, still gas of interstellar space. A traveler crossing outward would feel the character of everything around them change at that surface, from the fast, thin wind of the sun to the slower, denser, colder material of the galaxy itself. Only a very few objects made by human hands have ever traveled far enough to reach and cross this wall, and when they did, their instruments recorded the change directly. The particles around them shifted in kind. The count of certain sorts of radiation rose. The steady wind of the sun fell away, and the material of the galaxy took its place. In those readings was the quiet fact of a threshold crossed, the moment of leaving the sun's own bubble for the first time and entering, at last, the space between the stars. The distance to this wall is enormous. It lies many times farther from the sun than the farthest major planet, so far that sunlight itself, moving at the fastest speed anything can move, takes the better part of a day to cross the gap from the sun to the wall. To the traveler who began the night on a warm and sunlit world, that distance is almost beyond holding in the mind. And yet, measured against what comes next, it is nothing at all. The bubble the sun blows around itself, for all its vastness, is a small thing adrift in a far larger dark. Crossing its wall does not bring us to the edge of the sun's domain in the fullest sense. It brings us only to the edge of the sun's breath. The sun's pull, through gravity, reaches vastly, vastly farther, and it is that reach we cross next. There is something quietly moving about the fact that the sun keeps a bubble around itself at all. It is a warm, wind-filled hollow blown into the cold of the galaxy, and everything we have ever known lies inside it. Every planet, every moon, every comet, every living thing that has ever existed, all of it has spent its entire history tucked within this single breath of a single star. To reach the wall of the bubble and pass through it is to leave that shelter for the first time, and to understand, in a plain physical way, how thin the shelter has always been. On one side, the space that belongs to home. On the other, the space that belongs to everything else. And the wall between them is not a wall you could lean against. It is only the place where the sun stops being able to push. It is worth lingering on what the bubble of the sun's wind actually does for everything inside it, because its purpose is quiet and protective. The galaxy beyond is not empty in the way we might hope. It is threaded with radiation, with fast particles that race through interstellar space at tremendous speeds, remnants of distant stellar deaths and violent events far away. These particles stream through the galaxy in all directions, and they are harmful to delicate things, to living things, to the fragile chemistry that life depends upon. The sun's wind, filling its bubble, pushes back against much of this incoming radiation, deflecting a good portion of it, thinning the sleet of particles that would otherwise pour unimpeded onto the worlds inside. The bubble is not only a boundary, it is a shield. So the wall we cross at the edge of the wind is also the edge of a kind of protection, and stepping past it means stepping into the fuller radiation of the open galaxy. This is one of the real difficulties that any journey between the stars would face, and it is a quiet reminder of how much the sun does for the worlds it holds. It warms them, yes, and lights them, but it also wraps them in this immense blown bubble that softens the harshness of the wider galaxy, and everything that has ever lived has lived inside that shelter, never once feeling the full force of what lies beyond it. To cross the wall is to feel that force for the first time. The shape of the bubble itself is worth picturing because it is not a perfect sphere. The whole solar system is moving through the galaxy, drifting along its great orbit around the center, and as it moves, the bubble is pushed into a rounded, blunt shape at the front, where it plows into the oncoming interstellar gas and drawn out into a long, trailing shape behind, like the wake of a boat moving through water. The sun and its planets ride near the front of this moving bubble, pressed against the leading edge, and the wall of the bubble lies closer to us in the direction of our travel and farther in the direction we have come from. Even this enormous shelter, then, is a thing in motion, shaped by its passage through the galaxy, its walls closer on one side and farther on the other. We cross the wall at its nearest point, where the leading edge presses against the oncoming gas, and the fast, thin wind of the sun falls away behind us, and the slower, colder, denser material of the galaxy closes in around us. There is no sound to it, because there is nothing to carry sound. There is only the quiet change in everything, the shift from the sun's own space to the space that belongs to the galaxy at large, and the sense, unmistakable now, that we have truly left home. Ahead, the sun's gravity still reaches, holding its distant frozen shell, and we drift on toward it, out where the sun is no longer a disk at all. It is worth remembering, too, that only a handful of objects made by human hands have ever traveled this far, and they carry no crew and send back only the faintest trickle of signal across the enormous gap. They are small, cold, and slow, drifting outward now through the edge of the sun's domain, still faintly speaking to us across a distance that grows every day. Long after their voices fall silent, they will drift on, out past the wall of the wind, out into the space between the stars, carrying their small human cargo through the dark, for spans of time longer than our whole recorded history. They are the farthest things we have ever touched, and they are barely at the doorstep of the journey we are taking tonight in thought. There is a quiet wonder in the fact that the sun keeps this bubble breathing steadily across the ages, never pausing, never slackening for long, pouring its thin wind outward in every direction for billions of years without rest. The shelter it makes is not a thing built once and left standing. It is a thing continuously made, held open by a constant outward breath, so that if the sun ever fell quiet, the bubble would slowly collapse inward as the pressure of the galaxy pressed in. That it has never fallen quiet, that the breath has held steady through the whole long history of life on Earth, is part of the deep constancy of the star we belong to, faithful in this as in its warmth and its light. It is easy to forget that the shelter is an ongoing act rather than a finished wall, and there is a quiet reassurance in remembering that the sun is, at this very moment, still breathing it open around us all. We pass through it slowly, and the wind falls away behind us, and ahead there is a stillness we have not met before, because we are now in the space that lies between the stars, and there is no wind here at all. Part 4. The edge of the sun's reach. Past the wall of the wind, the sun no longer holds the space around it with its breath. But it still holds it with its gravity, and gravity reaches much, much farther than any wind. Surrounding the entire solar system, far beyond the planets and far beyond the bubble of the wind, there is thought to lie an immense shell of frozen bodies. It is a sprawling cloud of dark, icy objects, uncountable in number, each one loosely bound to the sun, drifting in slow motion through a cold so deep it can barely be described. This shell is so far out that the objects within it take not years, and not centuries, but many thousands of years to complete a single orbit around the sun. Some of them take longer than that. A single circuit for the most distant of them can last longer than the entire span of human history, many times over. Out here, the sun is no longer a disk, and it is no longer even the fierce white point it was among the outer planets. It has shrunk to an ordinary star. Bright, yes, brighter than any other star in that black sky, but a star all the same, a single hard spark, giving no warmth and casting no useful light. If you stood on one of these frozen bodies and looked toward the sun, you would see it as a bright point among other points, unmistakable but small, no more able to warm you than the distant stars around it. This is the true gravitational edge of the solar system. It is the distance at which the sun's hold on a body becomes so weak that the rest of the galaxy can begin to compete for it, where a passing star, drifting by over the ages, can reach in and pull a frozen object loose entirely and send it wandering off into the dark between the stars. The conditions in this outer shell are the coldest and stillest we have yet met. Distances here are no longer measured in the familiar units of the inner solar system. They are measured in appreciable fractions of the distance to the nearest other star, which tells you how far out we have come. The temperatures approach within a few degrees of the coldest temperature that can exist anywhere. These are among the coldest solid surfaces still bound to the sun in any sense at all. And the bodies themselves are ancient beyond reckoning. They are the leftovers of the solar system's birth, scraps of ice and rock flung outward long ago when the worlds were forming, and preserved ever since in this deep freeze, almost perfectly unchanged, holding within them the chemistry of a time before the planets had finished taking shape. This is the first place on the journey where the traveler can turn and look back and see the entire solar system gathered into one small region of the sky. Everything is there, collapsed into the space around a single ordinary spark. The warm inner worlds, the great outer planets, the bubble of the wind, every place that was ever called home, all of it fits within the glare of one point of light, and that point is not even the brightest thing you have ever seen. It is just a bright star among stars. And this whole gathered system, this entire domain of the sun, still sits at the center of an emptiness so large that the nearest neighboring star lies far, far beyond even this outer shell. We have reached the edge of the sun's reach, and we are still nowhere near another sun. Stand on one of these frozen bodies, then, and take in the sky. It is almost entirely black. There is no band of warmth anywhere in it, no bright disk, no glow of a nearby world. There is one hard white spark that is the sun. There is a scattering of stars, arranged in patterns that would look almost, but not quite, like the constellations seen from Earth, shifted slightly by the great distance we have traveled. And everywhere else there is the deepest, most complete dark we have yet encountered. The cold is total. Nothing moves quickly. If you dropped a stone here, the sun's pull is so faint that it would fall so slowly you could watch it drift downward for a lifetime and never see it land. The frozen shell around the sun deserves a closer look, because it is stranger and more important than its distance alone would suggest. It is thought to be roughly spherical, wrapping the whole solar system in every direction, rather than lying flat in the plane of the planets, so that the familiar disk of worlds we know is only a small inner region buried deep inside a great surrounding cloud of ice. The objects within it number, by most estimates, in the many billions, perhaps far more, each one a body of frozen gas and rock, some small, some large enough to be worlds in their own right, all of them held in the faintest possible grip by a sun so distant it gives them no warmth at all. They drift there in the dark, unchanged for the entire age of the solar system, a deep frozen archive of the material from which everything else was made. Now and then, one of these frozen bodies is disturbed. A passing star, drifting by over hundreds of thousands of years, or the slow tug of the galaxy itself, nudges one of them from its distant orbit, and it begins the long fall inward toward the sun. It falls for a very long time, thousands upon thousands of years, gathering speed as the sun's grip strengthens with nearness, until at last it comes sweeping through the inner solar system, warms for the first time in its existence, and streams out a long bright tail of gas and dust as the sun's heat drives material off its surface. We see these visitors as comets, and each one is a messenger from the frozen shell, a piece of the deep outer dark falling briefly into the light before swinging back out toward the cold from which it came. Some of them will not return for 100,000 years. Some will never return at all. This is a gentle thought to hold, that the bright comets that have crossed our skies throughout history are travelers from the very edge of the sun's reach, from the coldest and most distant places still bound to our star. They spend nearly all of their enormous lives out in the frozen dark, moving so slowly that a single orbit outlasts whole civilizations, and only for a few brief months do they pass through the warmth where they can be seen. The rest of the time they are out there in the shell, in the deep cold, in the dark, drifting with countless others of their kind through a region so huge and so sparsely filled that any two of them might never come within reach of one another in the whole history of the sun. And so the edge of the sun's reach is not truly a barren place, though it is cold and dark and slow. It is a reservoir, a boundless surrounding cloud of frozen worlds, holding the leftover material of creation in a deep freeze and releasing it, one falling comet at a time, back toward the light. We drift out through it slowly, past its countless silent bodies, until even they thin away and give out, and the sun's grip fades below the pull of the galaxy, and there is nothing ahead but the long emptiness that separates one star from the next. It is worth sitting with the slowness of this outer region, because slowness is one of its defining qualities, as much as cold or dark. Everything here moves at a crawl. The frozen bodies of the shell orbit so far from the sun that they drift along their paths at speeds a person could nearly keep pace with on foot, and a single orbit unwinds across tens of thousands of years. Nothing is in a hurry out here, because the sun's pull, which drives the swift inner planets around in mere years, is so faint at this distance that it can barely stir these distant bodies at all. Time itself seems to thicken and slow in the outer dark. A day means nothing, for there is no nearby sun to make a day. A year means nothing, for a single circuit takes an age. There is only the slow, patient drift of frozen worlds through a cold that never changes, on timescales that dwarf the whole of human memory. And yet even this is not the edge of the solar system in the way most people picture it, because there is no such edge to be found. The sun's grip simply weakens, object by object, until it can no longer be told apart from the general pull of the galaxy. Somewhere in this outer shell, the last body that belongs more to the sun than to anything else, gives way to the first body that belongs more to the wider dark. There is no line between them. There is only the slow handing over of one frozen world after another, from the keeping of the sun to the keeping of the galaxy, across a border no instrument could ever find. We drift across it in silence, and ahead of us now lies the true emptiness, the space between the stars, where even the frozen leftovers give out, and there is nothing for a very long way. Part 5. The edge of the neighborhood. Beyond the sun's frozen shell lies true interstellar space, the region between the stars, and the first thing that must be understood about it is how staggeringly empty it is. The night sky sells us a comforting picture. It shows the stars gathered close, scattered thickly across the dark, crowding one another as though the universe were full of light. That picture is an illusion, and it is an illusion of distance. The stars are not close together. They are separated by gulfs so wide that light itself, the fastest thing there is, takes years to cross from one to the next. The nearest star to the sun lies more than 4 light-years away, which means the light you see from it tonight left it more than 4 years ago, and any journey to it at any speed a machine can reach would take tens of thousands of years. There is a way to feel this that helps the mind hold it. Shrink the sun down until it is the size of a single grain of sand. On that scale, the nearest star is another grain of sand, and it lies many miles away, with nothing at all in the space between them. Not a pebble, not a speck, not a wisp of anything worth naming. Just miles of empty dark separating 2 tiny grains. That is the true density of the galaxy. The stars are grains of sand set miles apart, and everything else is emptiness. When you look up at a sky that seems full of stars, you are seeing the light of a few thousand grains, and mistaking the light for the crowding. The material that fills the space between the stars is almost nothing. On average, a small volume of interstellar space contains only a scattering of individual atoms, a vacuum far more perfect than anything that has ever been produced on Earth. And it is cold, colder than the outer solar system, cold enough that the only warmth anywhere is the faint background glow of the universe itself, which we will come to at the end of the journey. Yet even this near-perfect emptiness is not uniform. There are places where the thin gas gathers into wispy clouds, thinner than any smoke, drifting slowly between the stars. There are regions slightly denser and regions emptier still. And here and there, wandering through the dark with no star to call their own, are lonely worlds, planets thrown out of some distant system long ago, drifting the galaxy forever without a sunrise. Think about those wandering worlds for a moment, because they say something about the emptiness we are crossing. They are full-sized planets, some of them, worlds that might once have circled a star in an orderly way, until some gravitational accident flung them loose and sent them out into the dark alone. Now they drift, lightless and frozen, their surfaces near the temperature of empty space, no dawn ever rising on them, no seasons, no warmth, only the slow turning of a dark world under an unchanging field of distant stars. There may be a great many of them, more perhaps than there are stars, and we would never see them because they give off no light. They are part of the hidden population of the galaxy, and they are among the loneliest objects that exist. The emptiness between the stars is so complete that a traveler could cross the entire gulf from one star to the next, and, for nearly the whole of that crossing, pass nothing whatsoever. No world, no rock, no dust worth the name. Only the slow accumulation of years, and the cold, and the unchanging dark. The stars that looked like near neighbors on an earthly night turn out to be islands almost unfathomably far apart, and the space between them is not a gap in the galaxy. It is the substance of the galaxy. The galaxy is not mostly stars. It is mostly the dark that holds the stars apart, and the stars are the rare, bright exceptions scattered thinly through it. This is worth sitting with, because it overturns the impression the sky gives us so completely. We look up and we see light, and we think of space as a place full of light. But space is a place full of dark, with a very little light scattered through it. The crowding of the stars is a trick played by their brightness and their distance. Move out among them, and they scatter apart into isolation, each one a solitary fire, burning alone in an ocean of nothing, separated from its nearest neighbor by a gulf that light takes years to cross. The true face of the galaxy is not the bright, crowded band we see from the ground. It is this, an enormous, cold, nearly empty dark, with here and there a lonely star, and between the stars, almost nothing at all. The nearest stars are worth pausing on, because they make the emptiness personal. The closest star to the sun is not a single star at all, but a small family of them, two brighter stars circling one another, and a third, fainter one drifting far out around the pair. That faint outlying star is the nearest of all, a small, cool, dim red star, so faint that it cannot be seen from Earth without a telescope despite being our closest stellar neighbor. It is a little more than 4 light-years away, which is the shortest interstellar distance there is, and even this shortest of distances is so immense that a spacecraft leaving today at the fastest speeds we can manage would take tens of thousands of years to arrive. The nearest neighbor is, for all practical purposes, unreachable, and it is the closest thing out there. Between us and even that nearest star lies a gulf of nearly perfect emptiness, and it is worth trying to feel how empty it truly is. If you traveled from the sun toward that neighbor, you would leave the sun's frozen shell behind, and then cross an enormous span in which there is essentially nothing. No worlds. No rocks. No dust worth the name. Only the thin interstellar gas, a few atoms in each small volume, and the cold and the dark. For the overwhelming majority of the crossing, you would be nowhere near either star, suspended in the middle of the gulf, with the sun shrunk to one bright point behind you, and the neighbor still only a point ahead, and all around you the empty dark stretching in every direction. That middle region belonging to no star is the true face of interstellar space, and it makes up almost the whole of the distance. The gas that fills this space is not entirely uniform, and its variations are gentle but real. There are regions where it is a little warmer and thinner, blown clear by the ancient explosions of dying stars, and regions where it gathers into cooler, denser clouds. Our own sun happens to be drifting at present through a relatively empty patch, a local pocket of especially thin gas carved out long ago by stellar deaths, and beyond this pocket lie thicker clouds that the sun will drift into over long stretches of time as it continues its slow orbit around the galaxy. Even the emptiness, then, has a weather to it of the slowest and faintest kind, thicker here and thinner there, and the sun moves through it over the ages the way a ship moves through wide and quiet seas, passing from one great calm region to the next. But everywhere, thick patch or thin, the space between the stars is emptier and colder and darker than anything within the solar system, and it is the substance of the galaxy. We drift out into the middle of it, into the great gulf that belongs to no star, and we let the sun become one point of light among many behind us. Ahead, the scattered stars begin to gather in the mind into something larger, the great wheel they all belong to, and we turn now to cross it, out toward the edge of the galaxy itself. There is a strange intimacy in knowing that the light of these nearest stars, faint as it is, has been traveling toward us for years before it arrives, so that to look at them is to look a little way into the past. The light leaving the nearest of them tonight will not reach any eye on Earth for more than 4 years, and the light we see from it now set out more than 4 years ago, from a star that has moved on a little since. Every glance at the night sky is a glance backward in time, gently, by years for the nearest stars, and by far longer for everything beyond them. We are always seeing the sky as it was, never quite as it is, and the farther we look, the older the view becomes. Think too about how long it would take to send even a single word across these distances. A message traveling at the speed of light, the fastest any signal can move, would need more than 4 years simply to reach the nearest star, and more than 4 years again for any reply to return, so that the shortest possible conversation with our closest neighbor would take the better part of a decade. Across the galaxy, such a message would take 100,000 years to arrive. Between galaxies, millions. The emptiness between the stars is not only a barrier to travel, it is a barrier to speech, to signal, to any contact at all, stretching every possible exchange across spans of time longer than civilizations last. Each star sits alone not only in space, but in a kind of silence, its light reaching us across the years, while any true conversation remains impossibly slow. And this is only the emptiness within the galaxy. We have not yet reached the galaxy's edge, and already the space around us is more empty than full by an overwhelming margin. Ahead lies the far larger structure that all these scattered stars belong to, the great slow wheel of the galaxy itself. And to reach its edge, we must cross the whole width of it from the inside out. Part 6. The Edge of the Galaxy. Pull back far enough from the scattered stars and they blur together into a single immense structure. This is the galaxy, a slowly turning wheel of hundreds of billions of stars, all of them bound together by gravity and orbiting a common center. The Sun is one ordinary star far out in this wheel, riding along on an enormous slow journey around the center that takes hundreds of millions of years to complete even once. In all the time since the Sun formed, it has made only a couple of dozen of these great laps. From within the wheel, we see the galaxy edge on as the soft band of light that crosses a dark sky, the combined glow of countless stars too far away to separate into points. To reach the edge of the galaxy, the traveler must cross this entire wheel from the inside out, a passage of 100,000 light-years or more. And here the pattern we have followed all night repeats itself, now on a scale vastly larger than before. The galaxy has no hard edge. The stars simply thin out. The bright, crowded disk gives way to a sparser and sparser scattering, and then to a region where stars are rare and far between, and then to almost none at all. The traveler crosses from the crowded inner wheel, through the thinning outskirts, past the last few outlying stars, until there are no more stars ahead, only the dark. But the galaxy does not truly end where its stars end, and this is the strange and important part. The visible wheel of stars is only the small, bright, luminous core of something far larger and almost entirely unseen. Surrounding the bright disk of the galaxy is an enormous, faint halo. It is a roughly spherical region, far larger than the disk, and it is thinly populated with ancient stars, with tight old clusters of stars that formed near the beginning and have orbited the galaxy ever since, and with thin, hot gas spread through an enormous volume. Threading through this halo are streams of stars, long, slow ribbons of them, torn from smaller galaxies that the great galaxy has swallowed over the ages and stretched out along their orbits like the wake of something that passed through long ago. These streams are the scars of old collisions, the remains of lesser galaxies pulled apart and absorbed, and they mark a history of quiet violence that shaped the wheel we live in. But the halo holds something far more important than scattered old stars and torn streams, and it is here that the unseen finally becomes impossible to ignore. Enveloping the entire galaxy, reaching far beyond the last of the stars, there is a halo of invisible mass. It is matter that gives off no light and blocks no light, matter that cannot be seen through any instrument, detectable only by the pull it exerts on everything around it. And there is a great deal of it. This dark matter, as it is called, outweighs all the stars of the galaxy combined by a wide margin. More than 4/5 of the galaxy's mass is this silent, invisible material. The bright wheel of stars, everything we can see, everything that has ever been named in the sky, is only the small, luminous fraction floating within a much larger, darker body that we can never look at directly. This changes what it means to reach the edge of the galaxy. Everything we have crossed so far tonight was, in principle, visible. The warm inner worlds were lit by sunlight. The frozen outer shell was dark only for want of a nearby fire. The empty space between the stars was simply dark, but it was honest dark, dark you could in principle see through. Now, for the first time, the thing that holds the whole structure together is a thing that cannot be seen at all. The galaxy's true edge is not the edge of its light. It is the edge of its dark matter halo, and that edge lies far beyond the stars, in a region where there is nothing luminous to mark it, only the fading grip of an invisible weight. To cross the galaxy is to move through a structure with parts, and it is worth naming them as we pass, because the wheel is not a simple flat disk of even stars. Near the center lies a great bulge, a dense, rounded swarm of older stars packed far more closely together than they are out where the sun drifts. If you lived on a world near the center of the galaxy, the night sky would blaze with stars, thousands upon thousands of them bright enough to read by, the whole sky crowded with light in a way our own thinly scattered neighborhood never is. Around this central bulge wind the great spiral arms, long curving lanes where the stars and gas are gathered a little more thickly, where new stars are being born in bright clusters, and between the arms lie the dimmer gaps where fewer stars shine. The sun rides in one of these in-between regions, far out toward the rim, in a quiet and unremarkable stretch of the wheel. At the very heart of the galaxy, buried deep within the central bulge, sits a black hole of enormous mass, millions of times the mass of the sun, around which the entire wheel of stars slowly turns. It gives off no light of its own, and for most of its existence it is quiet, but it is the still anchor at the center of the galaxy's sprawling rotation, and every star in the wheel, the sun included, is in some sense orbiting it across the ages. We will not travel inward to it tonight, because our road runs outward, but it is worth knowing that it is there, the first of the great central black holes we will meet, holding the middle of our own galaxy while the stars wheel around it in their hundreds of billions. As we move outward from the sun toward the rim, the stars thin steadily, the spiral arms fade, and the light of the wheel diminishes behind us. There is no fence at the edge, no last star standing sentinel. The disk simply grows fainter and sparser until the stars are so few and so far between that they no longer form a wheel at all, only a scattering, and then not even that. Looking back from the thinning rim, the galaxy shows itself as what it is, a great luminous disk turning slowly in the dark, brightest at its center, fading at its edges, wound through with dark lanes of dust that trace the spiral arms in shadow. It is one of the most beautiful things there is to see, and from out here you can take in the whole of it at once, the entire home of every star we have ever named, hanging in the black. And then, beyond the last of the stars, we enter the halo, the great dim sphere of scattered old stars and invisible mass that is the galaxy's true and outermost body. Here the stars are so sparse that from a world among them the galaxy would appear as a single glowing shape low in the sky, and the rest of the heavens would be nearly empty, save for the faint, distant smudges of other galaxies far across the dark. We have reached the edge of the wheel of light, but not the edge of the galaxy's reach, because the invisible halo extends far beyond us still, and it is toward the meaning of that invisible reach that the journey now turns. The sun's long journey around the galaxy is worth holding in the mind for its sheer slowness, because it puts our own time in a gentle perspective. A single lap around the galactic center takes the Sun something like 200 million years and more. So slow that in the entire time complex life has existed on Earth, the Sun has made only a small handful of circuits, and in the whole span of human history, it has moved only the tiniest fraction of one. We are riding on something enormous, and turning so slowly that within a human lifetime, its motion is imperceptible, and yet it never stops, carrying the Sun and all its worlds in a great patient circle through the wheel of stars, around and around across the ages. So imagine standing at the true edge of the galaxy, out in the outermost reaches of the dark halo, and turning to look back. The whole bright wheel is there, every star ever seen from Earth, the Sun a single invisible grain somewhere within it, all of it gathered into a soft, luminous disk hanging in the black, small enough now that you could cover it with an outstretched hand. And you would know, standing there, that most of what holds that disk together is all around you, and yet perfectly invisible. A great dark weight surrounds you on every side, and you cannot see it, and you cannot touch it, and you cannot escape the pull of it, and it is the majority of everything the galaxy is made of. The luminous wheel is the exception. The dark is the rule. And we are about to leave even this behind and cross into the space between the galaxies, where the emptiness deepens once more, and the unseen forces grow stronger still. Part 7. The edge of the local group. Beyond the galaxy, the emptiness deepens again, and this is perhaps the sharpest increase of the entire journey. The space between the stars was nearly empty, a scattering of atoms in a huge dark. The space between the galaxies is emptier still, by a wide margin. Here the average density falls to something like a single atom in a space the size of a small house, and the distances grow so great that light takes not years but millions of years to cross from one galaxy to the next. To move between galaxies is to move through a gulf, beside which the gulf between the stars looks almost cozy. And yet, even here, matter is not scattered at random. The galaxies gather into families, small groups bound together by gravity, and our own galaxy belongs to one of these. The family we belong to is a modest gathering of a few dozen galaxies, drifting through the larger dark as a single loose unit. Most of them are small, faint dwarf galaxies, little more than scattered clusters of stars. 2 or 3 are large spirals, great wheels like our own, and one of these is drifting slowly toward us across the gulf, on a course that will, over billions of years, bring the 2 great galaxies together into one. But for now, the family holds together, bound against the general spreading out of the universe, an island of galaxies in a much larger emptiness. This island has an edge, and beyond that edge lies intergalactic space in its fullest and loneliest sense. To cross the edge of the local group is to leave behind the last thing that could be called a neighborhood. Beyond it, a galaxy sitting alone in the deep gulf would see, in every direction, only a scattering of faint smudges, each one an entire other galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars, so far away that it appears as nothing more than a dim patch of light, and so far away that the light left it millions of years ago. There is no nearby anything out here. The nearest large structure is unreachably distant. This is the emptiest kind of space we have yet described, and it is here, in the great gulf between the galaxies, that the traveler finally meets the deepest of the unseen forces, the pulls of things that can never be pointed to. We met the first of these already, in the galaxy's dark halo. But out here, it becomes clear that dark matter is not merely a feature of our own galaxy. It is the scaffolding of everything larger. Every galaxy sits inside an enormous, invisible clump of it. Every group and every cluster of galaxies is held together by far more of this dark, silent material than by all its visible stars combined. The bright galaxies are like lights strung along a structure we cannot see. and the structure is the real thing, and the lights are only the small luminous part of it. When we look out at the galaxies scattered through the dark, we are seeing the sparks caught on an invisible framework, and the framework is most of what exists. And there is more that pulls without being seen. Across enormous distances, whole crowds of galaxies, our own family among them, are being drawn steadily toward great unseen concentrations of mass, boundless gravitational attractions, whose full extent is hidden. Some of that hidden mass lies, from our vantage, behind the glow of our own galaxy, so that we are being pulled toward something we cannot properly look at, in a direction partly blocked from our view. We feel the pull in the motions of the galaxies, drifting together toward the densest regions of the universe, drawn by gravity that has been accumulating since the beginning. The whole enormous assembly of matter is in slow, silent motion, flowing toward the places where the dark scaffolding is thickest, and no one can see the thing doing the pulling. Then there are the black holes. At the heart of nearly every large galaxy sits one of monstrous mass, millions or even billions of times the mass of the Sun, a place where matter and light fall inward and do not return. These are the darkest objects in all of nature. They are not merely dark for want of illumination, the way empty space is dark. They are dark in a deeper way, because they permit no light to escape them at all. Nothing that falls past their edge can send back any signal. They can be found only by the havoc they cause around them, by the way stars and gas whirl and blaze as they spiral inward toward the edge, but the black holes themselves show nothing, reveal nothing, return nothing. They are the places in the universe where seeing simply stops. It is worth dwelling on dark matter a little longer, because it is the great unseen presence of the whole night, and its strangeness is quiet and profound. For a long time it was assumed that the galaxies were made of the things we could see, the stars and the gas and the dust. But the motions gave the secret away. Galaxies spin, and the outer parts of a galaxy spin far faster than they should if the only mass present were the visible stars. Something more is there, something with weight, tugging the outer stars along, holding the whole spinning wheel together against the speed of its own rotation. And there is a great deal of it, several times more of this unseen mass than all the visible material combined. It does not shine. It does not glow. It does not block the light passing through it. It reveals itself only through its gravity, through the pull it exerts on the things we can see, and by that pull, we know it is there, filling and surrounding every galaxy, the dominant material of the cosmos. What this dark matter actually is remains one of the great open questions, and it is a question worth holding gently rather than anxiously. It is not made of the ordinary stuff of stars and worlds and bodies. It is something else, some form of matter that interacts with the rest of the universe almost entirely through gravity alone, passing through ordinary matter and through itself as though it were barely there, and yet gathering, over the ages, into immense invisible clumps whose gravity shapes everything. It may be streaming through you as you rest, a thin wind of unseen particles passing through the earth and through your body without the slightest effect, felt by nothing, stopped by nothing. The universe is full of it, and we live inside it, and we have never once seen it directly. It is simply there, silent and enormous, the dark scaffolding on which all the bright things are hung. And beyond the dark matter of our own galaxy lies the dark matter of every other, and beyond that, the great hidden concentrations that draw whole crowds of galaxies across the void. There is a direction in the sky, partly hidden behind the band of our own galaxy's light, toward which our entire family of galaxies is being pulled, drawn by an accumulation of mass so great and so distant that its full extent has never been fully mapped. We are falling toward it, slowly, along with thousands of other galaxies, all of us drifting together toward a gathering of unseen weight, and no one can point to the thing that pulls. It is a motion we did not choose and cannot resist and cannot even properly see, a slow current in the sea of galaxies, carrying us toward the densest regions of the universe, as gravity has carried matter since the very beginning. This is the great humbling of the outward journey, and it is worth receiving it calmly. We are made of the rare, bright, visible kind of matter, the kind that forms stars and worlds and living things, and it turns out to be a small minority of everything there is. Most of the mass of the universe is dark and silent and unseen, and it is that dark majority that builds the great structures, draws the galaxies, and shapes the cosmos at its largest scales. We are the sparks. The dark is the substance. And out here in the gulf between the galaxies, where the visible things are so few and so far, that truth is plainer than anywhere, that the universe is mostly a thing we cannot see, moving in ways we can only feel through its pull. There is a particular quality to the black holes at the centers of galaxies worth dwelling on, because they gather in the two great themes of the night, the cold and the dark, into a single object. They are the darkest things there are, darker than empty space, because empty space at least allows light to pass through it, while a black hole permits no light to leave it at all. And around them, in the whirling matter that spirals slowly inward, the extremes of the universe are on display, matter torn and heated and flung about before it makes its final fall past the edge from which nothing returns. Yet the black hole itself, at the center of all that violence, is perfectly still and perfectly silent, a place where motion and light and time all come quietly to their end. It is the deepest kind of dark the journey will show us, and it sits at the heart of nearly every galaxy, holding the still center while the wheel of stars turns slowly around it. Here is the emotional center of tonight's journey, and it is also its quietest fact. It is not that space is cold, though it is. It is not that space is dark, though it is. It is not even that space is empty, though it is emptier than almost anyone imagines. It is that most of what moves the universe, most of its weight and most of its pull, is something no eye and no instrument can ever look at directly. The dark matter that builds the great structures cannot be seen. The hidden masses that draw the galaxies cannot be seen. The black holes at the centers of the galaxies allow nothing at all to be seen. We live inside a great dark machinery, and we see only the few bright sparks that happen to be caught in its gears, and we call those sparks the universe, when they are only the small lit fraction of something far larger, turning silently in the dark all around us. Part 8. The edge of the cosmic web. At the largest scale that can still be called structure, the galaxies and their families are not scattered evenly through space. They are strung along an immense and delicate architecture that fills all of space as far as anything can see. Long filaments of galaxies stretch across the dark, threads made of thousands upon thousands of galaxies, and where these threads meet, they gather into dense knots, great clusters where galaxies crowd together by the thousand. And between the threads lie enormous rounded emptinesses, immense bubbles of space, tens or even hundreds of millions of light-years across, that contain almost no galaxies at all. This is the cosmic web, the largest pattern in the universe, a foam of matter and void that repeats in every direction to the limits of sight. The filaments are the bright threads of the web, the places where the galaxies gather and where whatever light there is out here is concentrated. But it would be a mistake to think of the web as mostly filaments, because it is not. Most of the volume of the universe is not in the bright threads. It is in the voids, the great empty bubbles between them. These voids are the largest empty regions in all of nature. A galaxy sitting near the center of one of them would be more alone than anything we have yet described, more alone than a wandering world between the stars, more alone than a galaxy at the edge of its family. It would drift in an emptiness so wide that even the nearest filament, the nearest wall of light, would lie tens of millions of light-years off, its glow arriving old and faint across the gulf. Our own galaxy and its family sit on the outskirts of a much larger gathering, a great collection of many thousands of galaxies, bound loosely across an enormous span, and even that great gathering is only one region of the web, one knot among countless others, one thickening of the threads in a pattern that goes on and on beyond it. There is no center to the web. There is no special place in it. In every direction it looks much the same, threads and knots and voids, filaments of galaxies wrapped around bubbles of near-perfect emptiness, the whole thing shaped, once again, by the invisible dark matter whose gravity gathered the galaxies along its ridges in the first place. The galaxies light up only where the dark scaffolding is densest. Everywhere else, in the enormous bubbles between, there is almost nothing. And it is worth saying clearly that even the crowded places, the great clusters at the knots of the web, are mostly empty space. When we say that thousands of galaxies gather in a cluster, the word gather is doing gentle work. The galaxies are close together only by the standards of the cosmos. They are still separated from one another by enormous distances, still islands with sprawling dark gulfs between them, merely less great than the gulfs of the voids. There is no place in the universe that is truly crowded. There is only a range from the almost empty to the utterly empty, and the difference between a dense cluster and a great void is a difference of degree, not of kind. Emptiness is the condition of everything. The web is a faint tracery of light drawn across a darkness that vastly outweighs it. Here the traveler reaches the largest thing that can meaningfully be called a structure. There is nothing beyond the cosmic web that is a still larger kind of object, no superstructure that contains the web the way the web contains the clusters. Beyond the web, there is only more of the same web, repeating outward in every direction, growing fainter and older looking the farther out we manage to see, the pattern holding steady all the way to the limits of sight. The architecture that began, tonight, with a single grain of warmth around a single star, has become a web of light, strung across a dark so large that the mind can no longer picture it, only gesture toward it with numbers. And we have very nearly run out of things to cross. There is one edge left, and it is not like any of the others, because it is not made of space at all. The voids deserve more than a passing mention, because they are the true majority of the universe by volume, and there is a deep stillness in them worth resting in. When the universe was very young, it was almost perfectly smooth, with only the faintest ripples of slightly greater and slightly lesser density scattered through it. Over the long ages, gravity worked on those ripples. The slightly denser regions pulled in more matter and grew denser still, gathering into the filaments and the clusters, while the slightly emptier regions gave up their matter to their surroundings and grew emptier still, hollowing out into the great voids. The web we see today is the slow work of gravity on those first faint ripples, sharpening a nearly smooth beginning into threads and hollows over billions of years, and the voids are the places that were drained, the great rounded emptinesses left behind as the matter flowed away toward the threads. A single void can span hundreds of millions of light years, and within it there is almost nothing. A few lonely galaxies drift in the largest of them, galaxies that formed in the emptiness and have spent their entire existence in near total isolation, with no close neighbors, no bright kin, only the far distant walls of the void glimmering at the edges of their sky. To live in such a galaxy would be to look out on a night almost entirely empty, a darkness broken only by the faint smudges of galaxies tens of millions of light years away, their light so old and so dim that they would seem less like neighbors than like rumors. These void galaxies are the most isolated large objects in the universe, and there is something both lonely and peaceful in their condition, drifting alone through the largest emptinesses there are, undisturbed, unhurried, at rest in the deep dark. And yet the voids are not truly featureless, for they are shaped by the same invisible hand as everything else. Thin bridges of dark matter and faint gas stretch across even the emptiest of them, connecting the walls, threading the hollows, so that the whole web, filaments and voids alike, is a single connected structure, a huge three-dimensional lattice of matter and emptiness, filling all of space. From far enough away, if such a vantage were possible, the universe at its largest scale would look like a great foam, or like the branching threads of some enormous slow-grown tissue, bright where the galaxies gather along the threads, dark in the rounded cells between. It is the largest pattern there is, and it is beautiful in the way that very large and very quiet things are beautiful, without any drama, simply by being boundless and old and still. We rest for a moment in the deepest hollow of the web, in the center of a great void, as far from any galaxy as it is possible to be, and we let the enormous quiet of it settle over us. This is what most of the universe is like. Not the crowded, bright places we came from, but this, the still and rounded dark, stretching on, holding almost nothing, disturbed by almost nothing, at peace in a way that only emptiness can be. And then we gather ourselves for the last of the journey, and turn toward the final edge, the one that is not made of space at all, out at the very limit of what can be seen. It is worth noticing that the great web took nearly the whole age of the universe to grow into what it is, and that it is still, very slowly, changing. The filaments are still drawing matter inward. The clusters are still gathering. The voids are still, imperceptibly, widening. What we see when we look out at the cosmic web is not a finished thing, but a slow work still in progress, an architecture that has been assembling itself since the beginning and will go on shifting for ages yet to come, far too slowly for any eye to catch, moving on timescales beside which the whole of human history is less than an instant. The largest pattern there is also among the slowest, and it is quietly, patiently, still being drawn. It is worth holding, as well, the sheer number of galaxies strung along the threads of the web, because the count is part of the wonder. There are not thousands of galaxies, nor millions, but something closer to a great many billions of them scattered through the observable universe, each one a wheel of hundreds of billions of stars in its own right, each one holding its own dark matter halo and its own central black hole, and, very possibly, its own countless worlds. The web is woven from these, galaxy upon galaxy upon galaxy, more of them than there are grains of sand on all the beaches of the earth, and yet even in such abundance they fill only the thin threads of the structure, leaving the great rounded voids between them almost entirely bare. Even numbered in the billions, the bright things are the minority, strung sparsely across a darkness that dwarfs them all. But before we come to it, sit for a moment in the deepest of the voids, because it is the loneliest place the journey will take us, and it has its own quiet peace. To be at the center of a great cosmic void is to be as alone as it is possible to be. Every direction is the same, a deep and even dark, with only the faintest scattering of distant light at the very edge of what the eye could gather, unreachably far. There is no cold wind here, because there is nothing to make a wind. There is no motion nearby, because there is nothing nearby to move. There is only stillness and distance, and the slow, patient dark that fills almost the entire universe. Most of everything that exists is like this, empty and quiet and unlit. The bright places, the galaxies and the stars and the warm worlds are the rare exceptions. The rule is the void, and the void is at rest. Part 9. What we have crossed so far. It is worth pausing here, at the edge of the largest structures there are, to gather the whole journey back together before we come to the final threshold. We have come a long way tonight, and it helps to feel the shape of it as a single thing. The traveler began in warmth, near a star, in the one reliably comfortable place there is. Then the warmth faded, though the star still shone brightly overhead, and we learned that light and warmth come apart out here, that a thing can blaze in the sky and give no heat at all. That was the first edge, the edge of warmth, and it was closer to home than anyone expects. Then the sun's wind gave out at the wall of its bubble, that rare, true boundary where the sun's own breath finally balanced against the gas of the galaxy, and we passed through it and left the sun's shelter for the first time. Then the sun itself shrank to a spark at the edge of its gravity, among the frozen leftovers of its birth, worlds so cold and so slow that a dropped stone would fall for a lifetime. Then the stars spread apart into the near-perfect emptiness between them, grains of sand set miles apart with nothing in between, and we understood that the crowding of the night sky was only ever an illusion of distance. Then the scattered stars gathered into the bright wheel of the galaxy, and the wheel faded at its edges not into nothing, but into an invisible halo of dark matter that outweighs every star we can see. Then even the galaxies became islands, held loosely in families, and the families sat strung along the filaments of the cosmic web, with the great empty voids between them holding most of the volume of everything. At each of these thresholds, the same three things happened, quietly and without exception. It grew colder, step by step, from the warmth of sunlight toward the faint chill of empty space. It grew darker, from a bright day beneath a disk of a sun to a place where the brightest objects are dim smudges older than the earth. And more of what mattered became invisible, until at the largest scales the universe turned out to be ruled by dark matter that cannot be seen, and by black holes from which nothing returns. That is the journey so far, and it has an honest shape to it. Colder, darker, emptier, and more governed by the unseen, at every single step. There is no threshold on the whole outward road where the situation eased, where it grew warmer or brighter or more full. Every edge deepened the same three qualities. And this is the real meaning of the promise in the title, that space grows scarier the farther out you go. It is not that anything out there is hunting us. It is only that every measure of emptiness grows more extreme with distance, without relief, all the way out. That is a sobering thing to notice, and it is also, held rightly, a strangely calming one, because there is nothing to fear in cold and dark and distance. They are only the natural condition of nearly all of space, and we happen to live in one of the rare, warm exceptions. Let the numbers of the journey rest side by side for a moment, gently, not to be memorized, but simply to be felt as a rising scale. The warmth of the sun gave out within the span of the planets, a distance light crosses in hours. The wall of the wind lay farther still, a distance light crosses in most of a day. The frozen shell reached outward toward a fraction of the way to the nearest star, a distance light crosses in months and years. The nearest star itself lay a few light years off. The galaxy spanned 100,000 light years and more. The nearest large galaxies lay millions of light years away. The cosmic web stretches across billions, and the edge of sight lies farther than all of it, at a distance so great that its light has been traveling for very nearly the whole age of the universe to reach us. Each rung of that ladder is vastly larger than the one before, and we have climbed all of them tonight, one gentle step at a time. Notice, too, how the emptiness deepened at every rung, not smoothly, but in great steps. The solar system was empty, but it held worlds and moons and a frozen shell of ice. The space between the stars was far emptier, a scattering of atoms with the rare, lonely world drifting through. The space between the galaxies was emptier still, by a wide margin, an atom in a roomful of nothing. And the great voids were the emptiest of all, hollows so enormous and so bare that a galaxy could sit alone in one for its entire life. At each step, the fullness fell away and the emptiness grew, until emptiness revealed itself as the true and ordinary condition of the universe, and the full, bright, warm places showed themselves for the rare exceptions they have always been. There is a way of feeling all this that turns the weight of it into something lighter. We began the night thinking of home as the ordinary thing, and the dark as the strange exception to be feared. The journey has quietly reversed that. The dark is the ordinary thing, the immense and patient and unremarkable condition of nearly all of space. And it is home that is the strange and precious exception, the rare, warm, lit corner in an enormous quiet. To know this is not to feel small in a frightening way. It is to feel how unlikely and how lucky the warmth was, how rare the light, how precious the small, bright place we set out from, and to carry that back with us as we complete the last of the journey. So we hold the whole outward road in mind, the falling warmth and the thinning light and the deepening emptiness and the rising dominance of the unseen, and we turn to the final threshold. It is unlike all the others, and it will close the two great threads of the night, the cold and the dark, at their farthest and deepest point. Beyond it lies not the end of the universe, but only the end of the view, and there is a quiet comfort waiting in that distinction, which we come to now at the edge of sight. There is one more comfort worth gathering here before the last threshold, and it concerns our own place in all of it. For all that the journey has carried us through cold and dark and emptiness, we have not, at any point, been lost. We know where home is. We could turn, at any of these thresholds, and point back toward the small, warm world we came from, and trace the whole road back in the mind, threshold by threshold, to the sunlit ground. The universe is enormous and mostly empty, but it is not a maze, and we are not adrift in it without bearings. We are simply far from home, and we know exactly how far, and we know the way back, and that knowledge is its own kind of shelter to carry into the final dark. Only one threshold remains, and it is unlike all the others we have crossed, because it is not made of space at all. Every edge tonight has been a place, a distance you could in principle travel to, a region of the cosmos with an inside and an outside. The last edge is not a place. It is a limit on sight itself, set by the age of the universe and the speed of light, and it surrounds every observer everywhere, moving with them wherever they go. It is the edge of what can be seen, and beyond it lies not the end of the universe, but only the end of our view of it. We come to it now, at the farthest reach of the night, where the cold reaches its floor and the dark reaches its limit, and the light we see is older than anything we have yet described. Part 10. The Edge of Sight. There is a final edge, and it is the strangest of all, because it is not a place you could ever travel to. It is a limit on how far anything can be seen, set by two simple facts about the universe. The first is that light travels fast, but not infinitely fast, at a fixed speed that nothing can exceed. The second is that the universe has existed only for a finite time. Put those two facts together, and a boundary appears. Light from the most distant regions of the universe has simply not had enough time to reach us yet. There is a distance beyond which nothing can be seen, not because there is nothing there, but because whatever is there has not yet had time to send its light across the gulf. This distance is the edge of the observable universe, and it is best understood as a horizon of sight. To look out toward this edge is the same as looking back in time, and this is one of the deepest and quietest truths in all of astronomy. Because light takes time to travel, everything we see is seen as it was when the light left it, not as it is now. The sun we see is the sun of several minutes ago. The nearest stars we see as they were years ago. The nearer galaxies we see as they were millions of years ago, and the far galaxies as they were billions of years ago, when the universe was young. The farther out we look, the deeper into the past we see, so that the outward journey through space is also, unavoidably, a journey backward through time. We never see the distant universe as it is. We only ever see it as it was. And at the very edge of sight, the traveler does not see galaxies at all. Before there were galaxies, before there were stars, the whole universe was a hot, dense, glowing fog, and it is the light of that fog, released when the fog finally cleared, that reaches us now from the farthest distance. But it does not reach us as a blaze. The expansion of space, over all the time the light has traveled, has stretched it out, cooled it, drawn it from a fierce glow down to a faint whisper of radiation that comes from every direction at once. It is the oldest light there is, the afterglow of the universe's hot beginning, and it now sits only a few degrees above the coldest temperature that can exist. It fills the whole sky evenly, a cold and gentle static of ancient light, and it marks the farthest that anything can ever be seen. Here, the temperature thread of the whole night reaches its floor. The warmth that began, hours ago, as sunlight on a summer world, has thinned at every threshold, past the cold of the outer planets, past the deeper cold between the stars, past the near absolute cold of the great voids, until the only warmth left anywhere is this faint background glow, the cooled remnant of the universe's first fire, now barely above absolute zero, and spread perfectly smooth across the whole of the sky. There is nothing colder than the deep universe far from any star, and there is no older or fainter light than this. The two threads we have followed all night, the falling temperature and the thinning light, arrive together at the same final place, and that place is the edge of sight. But notice what this edge is and what it is not. It is not a wall in space that you could reach and press your hand against. It is not the end of the universe. The universe is almost certainly far larger than the part we can see, very possibly larger beyond all measure, stretching on past the horizon of sight in every direction. It is only that the rest of it lies beyond the reach of any light that has had time to arrive. The edge of the observable universe is a horizon in time, not a boundary in space, and like the horizon on the ocean, it belongs to the observer. Every point in the universe sits at the center of its own sphere of sight, sees its own horizon at its own farthest distance, and beyond that horizon, for each of them, lies a universe that has not yet shown itself. There is a subtlety in the edge of sight worth drawing out slowly, because it makes the horizon stranger and gentler than it first appears. Because the universe has been expanding all the while that the ancient light has traveled, the places whose light we now receive from the very edge are not, today, at the distance the travel time would suggest. The oldest light has been on its way for very nearly the whole age of the universe, but the regions that emitted it have been carried much farther away in the meantime by the expansion of space, so that they now lie far beyond the simple distance that light could cross in that time. The edge of the observable universe, measured as it is now, lies much farther off than the age of the universe alone would imply. The horizon is larger than a first guess would make it, swollen by the expansion that has stretched the whole cosmos while the light was in flight. And the light itself has been changed by that long journey through expanding space, changed in a way that ties the whole night together. When it set out, it was the fierce glow of a hot young universe, bright and energetic. But as it traveled, the space it moved through stretched, and the light stretched with it, its waves drawn longer and longer, its color shifting down from visible brightness toward the invisible, until what began as a blazing glow arrives now as a faint whisper of cold radiation, far below the reach of the eye, detectable only as a gentle hum of energy coming evenly from every direction. The oldest light in the universe reaches us not as light we can see, but as a cold and even glow filling the whole sky, the stretched and cooled remnant of the beginning, sitting just a few degrees above the coldest temperature there is. This is where the temperature thread and the darkness thread of the whole journey meet and end together. The warmth that began as sunlight has fallen, at every threshold, to this final floor, the faint few degrees of the background glow, the coldest that the general universe ever is. And the light that began as a bright day has thinned, at every threshold, to this final limit, beyond which there is nothing more to see, not because space ends, but because sight does. The two threads we have followed all night arrive, together, at the same last place, and that place is the horizon of sight, cold and dark and ancient, the farthest edge of everything the universe has let us observe. But hold on to the gentleness in it. The horizon is not a wall and not an ending. It is a limit of view, and it belongs to the one who looks. Every observer everywhere sits at the center of their own horizon, sees their own farthest edge at their own greatest distance, and is surrounded by their own sphere of the visible, with an unseen and very likely unbounded universe stretching away beyond it in every direction. The edge is not the end of the cosmos. It is only the end of our present view of it, a horizon that moves with us and encloses us, holding us always at the center of the part we can see, while the rest of it, immense and dark and unrevealed, goes gently on. And there is something worth saying about how much of this edge we have actually learned to see. Faint as it is, the cold background glow at the limit of sight has been measured with great care, mapped across the whole sky, its gentle unevenness charted in fine detail. From those faint patterns, much of what we know about the age and shape and history of the universe has been drawn. The oldest and coldest light there is, the whisper at the very edge of the observable, turns out to be one of the richest messages the universe has ever sent us, carrying within its faint unevenness the record of how everything began. The farthest, faintest thing we can see is also, in its way, the most eloquent. There is a gentle paradox worth resting in here at the edge of sight. The farther out we look, the younger the universe we see, so that the most distant regions show us not the aged cosmos of today, but the cosmos as it was in its earliest times, still forming, still lit by its first fire. In a strange way, then, the edge of sight is also a kind of edge of time, a boundary beyond which we are looking back so far that we reach the beginning itself, the hot, early glow before the first stars. We cannot see past it, not because space runs out, but because time does, because there was no earlier light to send. The horizon of sight is the horizon of the past, and to gaze at it is to gaze all the way back to the morning of everything, held forever at the farthest edge of what the eye can reach. There is a real comfort hidden in this, once the strangeness of it settles. The edge of the universe is not a cliff you could fall from. It is only the point past which the cosmos has not yet had time to reveal itself to us. The dark beyond it is not empty. It is merely unrevealed, full of galaxies and structure we will never see, their light still crossing the gulf toward eyes that may be long gone before it ever arrives. To stand at the edge of sight is not to stand at the end of everything. It is to stand at the limit of a single observer's view, held at the center of a sphere of the visible, with an unseen and unbounded universe stretching gently away in every direction beyond it. Part 11. The Edge That Moves Away. There is one last thing to understand, and it is the deepest reason the journey grows quietly more sobering the farther it goes. The edge of sight is not fixed in place. Space itself is expanding. Every distant region of the universe is drifting farther from every other, the great gulfs between the galaxies slowly widening as the space within them stretches. This is not the galaxies flying apart through space, like fragments from some explosion. It is the space between them growing, everywhere at once, carrying them apart on a slowly rising tide. And this expansion, over the ages, has been speeding up, driven by something as invisible as dark matter, and even less understood, a faint pressure woven into empty space itself that pushes everything gently but relentlessly apart. Because of this, the most distant galaxies are being carried away from us faster than their own light can close the distance between us. Their light sets out toward us, but the gulf it must cross is widening faster than the light can travel, and so it never arrives. Over immense spans of time, one by one, the farthest galaxies will slip beyond the edge of sight entirely, their light stretched and dimmed, and finally lost, and they will never be seen again by anyone here. The observable universe, the sphere of everything we can see, is not a growing collection. In the deep future it becomes a shrinking one, as more and more of what it once held drifts silently beyond its horizon and is gone. This means the emptiness we have crossed tonight is not a fixed stage on which the galaxies sit. It is growing. The islands of light are drifting apart. The dark between them is widening. The reachable universe is quietly shrinking, and everything that lies beyond our own bound family of galaxies is slowly receding toward a distance from which nothing will ever return. In the far future, a traveler at the edge of sight would find the sky emptier than it is now, with fewer distant galaxies in it, more dark between them, and finally, over stretches of time longer than the mind can hold, a cold and nearly featureless dark, reaching outward toward the coldest number there is. Everything grows colder and darker and more separate, exactly as it has at every threshold of the night, but now as the slow fate of the whole. And yet there is a strange and genuine peace in it, and it is the note the whole journey has been quietly moving toward. Every edge we have crossed tonight looked, from the near side, like an ending. The edge of warmth felt like the end of comfort. The wall of the wind felt like the end of the sun's domain. The frozen shell felt like the end of the solar system. The thinning stars felt like the end of the galaxy. The great voids felt like the end of structure. The horizon of sight felt like the end of the universe. And every single one of them turned out to be not an ending, but a threshold, a place where one thing gave way to something larger and quieter lying beyond it. Not one of them was a wall. Every one of them was a way through. The final edge is the same. The slow spreading out of everything is not a wall the universe is rushing toward, and it is not a catastrophe approaching in the dark. It is only the long, gentle settling of a universe that began in fire and is easing, over spans of time beyond all counting, towards stillness and rest. The cold, the dark, the widening emptiness, the great pull of the things we cannot see, none of it is aimed at us, and none of it is in any hurry. It is simply the natural shape of a very old and very large universe, relaxing outward into quiet, and we are held somewhere small and warm within it, watching it drift. The faint pressure that drives the expansion apart deserves a gentle word, because it is the last and least understood of all the unseen forces we have met. It fills empty space itself, evenly, everywhere, a subtle outward push woven into the vacuum, and where there is enough empty space between things, its accumulated effect overcomes even gravity and carries them apart. Within bound systems, where gravity is strong, it changes nothing. Our own family of galaxies is held together against it, and will stay together. The stars of the galaxy will hold. The sun and its worlds will hold. But across the great gulfs between the distant galaxies, where gravity has grown thin with distance, this faint pressure wins, and it carries those far galaxies away from us, faster and faster as the ages pass. What it is remains genuinely unknown. It is simply there, the most abundant thing in the universe by the measure of its effect, and the most invisible, a property of empty space that no one has ever seen and that shapes the fate of everything. Because of it, the deep future of the universe is a future of increasing solitude, and it is worth describing so that its calm can be felt rather than feared. Over spans of time so long that the present age of the universe is only a small fraction of them, the distant galaxies will recede beyond the edge of sight, one after another, until the sky beyond our own bound family is empty. A watcher in that far future, looking out from within the merged remnant of our galaxies, would see a dark sky with no distant galaxies in it at all, no evidence of the great cosmic web, no sign of the expansion that carried everything away. The universe would look, to them, like a single island of stars in an endless dark, and the grander structure would have slipped entirely beyond their reach, its light no longer arriving, its existence no longer knowable from within. We happen to live in a bright and crowded moment, then, when the sky is still full of galaxies and the evidence of the whole enormous cosmos is still visible to anyone who looks. That is a kind of privilege, a window of time in which the universe still shows itself, before the slow expansion draws the curtains. And even the far future is not a violent thing. It is only quieter and darker and more spread out. The same three qualities we have followed all night, extended now across all of time as the fate of everything. The universe does not end in fire or in collapse, in the most widely held picture, but in a long, slow, gentle cooling and spreading, drifting toward stillness over spans of time beyond all counting, growing ever calmer as it goes. And that is the last and deepest reason the outward road grows quietly more sobering the farther it goes, and also the last reason it need not be feared. Everything trends toward cold and dark and separation and stillness, not as a threat, but as a settling, the way a great warm day cools toward a quiet evening, the way a fire that has burned long and bright eases at last into embers and then into a soft grey rest. The universe began in fire and is easing, over unimaginable time, toward that rest. We are here in its morning, in its warmth, in its light, held somewhere small and bright within it, and the great cold quiet that waits at the end of all things is not close, and is not aimed at us, and is nothing, tonight, that we need to carry. It helps, at the very end, to place ourselves back in time as well as in space, because we have traveled through both tonight. We are living in what might be called the morning of the universe, when stars still burn in their countless billions, when galaxies still fill the sky, when the whole grand structure is still lit and visible and full. This is not a small thing. The long ages of cold and dark and emptiness that lie ahead are almost unimaginably longer than the bright age we live in now, so that the warmth and light around us are a brief and early chapter in a story that trends, over spans beyond all counting, toward quiet. To be here now, in the lit morning, with the sky still full, is a rare and early thing, and there is a gentle privilege in it worth carrying into sleep. So let the edges rest where they have always been. Not walls, but thresholds. Not endings, but openings onto something larger and quieter than the last. We have traveled tonight from the warmth of a single star all the way out to the horizon of sight, and we have watched the cold deepen and the dark widen and the unseen forces grow at every step, and we have found, at the end of it, not a thing to fear, but only the sprawling, patient, spreading quiet that fills almost the whole of existence. The universe is mostly cold, and mostly dark, and mostly empty, and mostly invisible. And it is also, in its slow and enormous way, at peace. Let your breathing slow. Let the dark around you feel less like an ending and more like open space around you. Let the great cold distances be, for tonight, simply the quiet shape of a universe that holds you gently somewhere near its one small warmth. Sleep well, and good night.